Hey guys, Red here with Red Models, coming at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be building the Revell 148 scale B-17G Flying Fortress. This is a project I got from school for my midterm. It was actually quite a fun project to do. So the school had a selection of models on hand. They were kind of limited in selection and scale, mainly just 48th Revell kits. And having built this kit before and not doing the best job on it, I wanted to revisit the kit. So let's move on to the build. To start the build, I installed most of the parts of the fuselage wall, minus anything that had a wood grain texture to it. If you look at the molded in details, you can see that it has all the wiring, or most of the wiring, and oxygen cables for the crew. I feel like this is really good detail for an older Revell kit with good detail. There are injector pin marks, however they are in places where they will be invisible or not seen at all on this version of the kit. If you look at the side of the fuselage, you'll notice that there's a lot more ribbing to it than on the other side. This is because at one point they had released a clear fuselage half, so they altered the fuselage half to have more ribs than the other one. Here's the assembly of the flight deck. Currently it is missing the seats and the yoke and some small other minor details. I liked this portion of the aircraft as it has wood grain texture for the ammo boxes and for the navigator's desk. On the flight deck, you typically would have your flight engineer, your pilot, your co-pilot, bombardier, and your navigator. And all these positions are represented on the flight deck here. Okay, so moving on, we have the interior of the radio room and part of the waist gunner sort of section. That little section is for the ball turret. This part had very few parts, actually like 2 or 3 parts really if you don't count the bulkheads. This is the bomb rack / catwalk. I built this and I installed it, but since I did the bomb bay doors closed, it's really a hidden thing that's just there to help keep the alignment of the whole interior section. So the instructions for the kit on painting the aircraft differ from what I have seen in person. So let me take you back to the summer of 2018. In the summer of 2018, I got a rare opportunity to get to fly in a B-17 Flying Fortress. It was a really wonderful experience to do, and I highly recommend if you have the opportunity to do it. It was actually a rather fun experience. But as you can see, the instructions had actually said paint the interior either a silver or olive drab color, which I have a feeling that they didn't do the anti-corrosive paint on the interior until later on in the war, like probably last few months of the war, as to save for weight, and well, the aircraft weren't lasting too terribly long. But earlier models of the G would have the primer on the inside. Now, you could sit here and say that this is a restored aircraft, that they don't want the aircraft to corrode because it's a currently working aircraft, and that is also a very valid point that could be made for this. But I just figured, I'm just going to paint it like this, so yeah. Okay, so here's a picture of the engine nacelles from the radio room. You can see how weathered and how gross these engine nacelles would get over time from continual use, and you actually also get a good view of some paint chipping too. Here I am sitting in the bomber / navigator compartments. It was a wonderful view from up there, and I really like the position. If you notice, also there's a wooden floor that the model does not show. It actually shows it as being a metal floor. So I took that into consideration when making the floor of that compartment. Here's another view of the engines, this time from the navigator desk. Here's a look over the wing of the aircraft. You can sort of see where the exhaust stains are coming in over the wing in this picture. The aircraft that I am in is what used to be called Madras Maiden, but was changed the next year to be painted up as Yeo Pum. Okay, let's move on to the build. Here you can see the flight deck section, and you can see how I did the wood grain. For the wood grain on the front, what I did was I dry brushed some of the Tamiya red brown on top of the tan. It also highlighted the details on the desk as well. I felt that the navigator's desk was blank and missing some details. So, using a sheet of paper, I made a map for him, and I also made an E6B flight calculator. Something I did leave out from the desk, though, is the fixed lamp. As I had a very limited amount of resources and time to build this kit, I really did not feel like doing the lamp, and probably could not have done the lamp. Here's the rear flight deck bulkhead. Something weird that I've never noticed was that it came with decals for the door. I also did the dry brushing technique that I used on the floor for the bombardier section on the door. Here's the instrument panel. What I did to highlight all the gauges was I dry brushed Tamiya white paint over each gauge, and then for switches and other details, I used a sharpened toothpick to pick them out. What I did to weather is I took a sponge with Tester's chrome, and I dabbed it over the surfaces where there would be heavy wear. And then I also used AK Interactive's European dirt pigment as, well, dirt that would have been tracked to the aircraft by the ground crews. Here's the radio room. As you can see, I used the same strategy that I used before for the wood. It helped out pick out the details on the piece of wood that had the wood grain molded in, and also created a halfway decent effect on the door. I also used the same practice for the details on the radios that I did on the instrument panel. Something unique, though, to this kit that I did was I took a piece of cut sprue and some Tamiya tape, and I made a lanyard for a camera for the radio operator, sort of as what you saw in the scenes in Memphis Belle. Here's the bracket for the ball turret. I used Model Master's brass to paint the ammunition shells. Here's the other side of the rear bulkhead for the radio compartment. Here's the nose section with the side panels on. I picked out some of the details using, again, the sharpened toothpick technique. However, some of the wiring was just too small for even that to get. Here, I gotta start work on the waist gunner positions. I think they went together quite nicely. Revell even includes ribbing for the tail gunner position. Now, I want to talk about the paint I used. I used a combination of the Tamiya yellow-green and the Tamiya green, which came out to turn out into a nice interior green color. And I painted the bomb rack that nobody will ever get to see ever again. With everything in place, it was time to close everything up. But I couldn't help but add one more detail to this kit. I decided to make the ammunition belts for all the gun positions. What I did was I took some paper and cut them to the right size and painted them with the brass color, and then ran the paper from the ammo boxes to the machine guns. This is where the kit starts showing its age, when you start putting the fuselage half together. Up towards the front, where the bomb bay is, it really did not want to fit. Part of the problem was that bomb rack I was talking to you guys about. It was just slightly too tall, and it was preventing everything from coming together. This presented a big problem for fitting the windscreen in, as well as the two halves up at the top would not go together. So what I ended up doing was splitting the fuselage half up towards the top, sliding in the canopy, and then putting it back together. Something else I did on this step too was I started off the masking process. There was a lot of windows that needed masking on this kit, but it turned out pretty good in the end. Another thing you'll notice is the different shade of green from the interior on the waistguard position. That is because I am testing out a new paint on this kit, a new paint brand called Mission Model Paints. With the fuselage complete, it was time to move on to the wings. For the wings, it was rather straightforward and simple. You had one piece that went into the landing gear well that would help support the landing gear itself. I used the Mission Model's interior green for the interior of the engine itself. Also using a Dremel, I opened up the exhaust portions of the superchargers. I then put together the wings. They went together okay, and now it's time to move on to the engines. Wait, what's that on the leading edge of the wing? Just as I thought I wasn't going to have any more setbacks, I get a glue print of my fingers right on the middle of the wing. The only way to fix this would be to sand down the wing itself, which removes all of the rivet detail. Having to sand this down put me behind schedule, so I really don't have the tools to regrave panel lines, so I lost all panel line details here. Thanks to the setback to the wings, I did minimal detail on the engines. Yes, more footage of B-17s. My teacher decided that he wanted the B-17 to be painted like Ye Olde Pub. However, the kit does not come with decals for Ye Olde Pub, and that the Ye Olde Pub is a E model of a B-17 and not a G model. Which he wanted to do Ye Olde Pub because it had come to town several times in the past year. And truth be told, I really like Ye Olde Pub. I love the story behind her, and I have gotten to do work with Ye Olde with this aircraft before. As I said previously, the previous year, I had actually gotten to fly in this set of aircraft. However, I really didn't want to do an E model, convert the G model into an E model, and I really didn't want to do the markings on this model. So, and it would have taken time to get the decals to show up. So I went with the in-the-box decals and paint schemes. This is Ye Olde Pub parked out on our ramp. And this is Yankee Lady at EAA Oshkosh. I just grabbed a picture of her from my camera. So back into the build. I decided to go ahead and use mission model paints for the rest of the aircraft. After reviewing from their website how to use their chrome, I sprayed down their white gloss, which was horrible. It came out at random intervals of consistency. It was either milk or would refuse to come out of the airbrush. Once I had gotten a somewhat even coat of that down, which was really hard, I then switched over to the chrome. I sprayed down the chrome in several layers, and in hindsight, I probably should have went with a Tamiya spray can instead of airbrushing very expensive paint onto such a large surface, as it took 2 bottles of mission model chrome to actually get a somewhat even finish. After letting it dry for a day, I masked off the chrome and sprayed the US Olive Drab Faded. When I went to go and remove the tape, however, the chrome peeled like a candy wrapper would from candy. And it honestly sucked because of how much work went into putting on the finish. I'll have to revisit these paints and do a better review and what I did wrong here. I then masked up the tail for the blue band. My masking was a little off, but it came out okay. The reason you see that rectangle there is for the numbers, because around the numbers they just did not paint the blue. This time, however, when I went to go and remove the tape, the silver stayed silver and on the airplane. So I don't know what the problem is with the wing, and if it just peels off in spots or what. I then, out of fear of having the paint on the entire wing peel off, freehanded the do not walk lines and the de-icing boots. Freehanding this was sort of a mistake for the one wing where the raised panel lines outlining the walkway got sanded down, but besides that, it stayed pretty well and straight. The decals went on nicely onto this model and took to the raised panel lines well. However, there were spots where the paint reacted with the water, which again can be prevented by using some more of their products, such as clear coats and their polyurethane, which I did not buy. I will do another video on painting with mission model paints and an experiment with them. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and stick around for the next one. As always, model on.